be here,
Yeah,
really.
clearly. And so Dustin Miles going to kick things off. Temple Garden tap, that's not the start that he wants.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, you would want a one-drop, right? But I was talking about this with Matthias earlier, and really the nut draw involves a Temple Garden in this green-white deck, any sort of dual land. So
yeah,
he might not be off to the fastest start, right? But at least it looks like his mana is there.
Yeah, and neither player off to the fastest start. Justin does not have the Thoughtseize. Dustin Miles does not have a 2-drop to go with his 1-drop. He may still have Selesnya Charm. And actually, there it is. We see it. But yeah, not a blistering pace from either player here. Justin's going to play a land and pass, and Dustin is going to attempt the end-step Selesnya Charm. Good to go. Untaps. And we'll see if this draws removal. It's interesting to see players still reading cards from Return to Ravnica on the very last week of Return to Ravnica Standard.
Well, I mean, now it all makes sense, right?
Yeah.
It's ultimate price. Like, it is a gold card.
Sure.
It is reasonable to expect that that makes a multicolored creature,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah, ultimate price, the answer from Justin. So he gets rid, and it actually finds a target for ultimate price, which is not easy to do against green-white.
Yeah, certainly.
So takes down the mono-white Reduke token. Dustin Miles quick to replace it with a Loxodon Smiter. And Justin's still with the answer. Hero's Downfall clears it out. And I did catch a glimpse of an Advent of the Worm, so would not be surprised to see a land and a pass here from Dustin.
Yeah, I mean, definitely Dustin's draw would be a lot better with a 1-drop here. Like, while Justin is spending his time getting rid of Dustin's creatures, Dustin would be pecking away in the meanwhile. But this is still not, like, the worst spot for Dustin, really. Like, Justin has been doing what he wants to do and will probably play an Underworld Connections this turn, but then at least Dustin gets to play an Advent the Worm, get a hit in, and, you know, hopefully go from there. Hopefully follow that up with something. Yeah,
the worst spot for Dustin is for Justin to have played a Pack Rat or something like that and then killed all of Dustin's creatures. As long as the board is clear on both sides, Dustin's not sweating it. Night Veil Spectre going to come down for Justin. This Justin-Dustin thing getting kind of tricky. Uppal, we'll say. Yeah, Uppal and Miles. So Night Veil Spectre coming down for Uppal, and as we suspected, 5/5 Worms with Trample doing what they do best, appearing in end steps and crashing in. So Uppal going to take the damage, Dustin with no follow-up. And the Spectre comes crashing in.
And I say that Justin, like, I expected him to kind of play the Underworld Connections, but I like his play of just getting the creature out there and starting to actually deal some damage.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people view this mono black deck as more of a control deck, and I think that's kind of a misnomer where you actually do have to close out the game at some point.
Yeah. And speaking of closing out games,
Pack Rat's pretty good at doing that.
Yeah. Pack Rat going to come down. I said, you know, I started to say turn 5 Pack Rat, one of the best forms of Pack Rat because you can activate it immediately. You don't have to worry about removal. But Justin is not going to expose himself to that. Going to go ahead and use a second ultimate price to kill off that worm. I guess this is not a matchup where he really has to worry about losing his Pack Rat.
No, I mean, certainly Dustin could have Banishing Light or something to get rid of the 1 Pack Rat, and that might be kind of annoying, but I think Justin's still fine with that, really.
Likely taking another 5, the bigger worry. So Justin going to attack. Dustin flashes in another 2/2 off of Selesnya Charm. Unclear if he, chose not to block.
Which is good. I don't think it's chump blocking time yet.
Definitely not. Justin is not going to waste time. Just makes a big pile of rats.
Yeah, I mean, we could sit here and just draw some cards with Underworld Connections, or we could just make a bunch of rats and attack our opponent, and that's generally the better game plan.
Yeah, what are you going to draw that is better than another Pack Rat?
Right, exactly.
So Dustin going to swing with that that Knight. Looks like Sunblade Elf came down pre-combat to represent a pump, which he did follow through on. I had no better play, one would presume. That trades off with 1 rat. That's not really a game you want to be playing at this stage.
Certainly not for the green-white deck, but I feel like Justin is in a fine spot. He's still got a bunch of rats, and he just wants to not get into a spot where he takes a bunch of damage kind of accidentally, and then would be facing down like a lethal Johnny or something.
Yeah,
you know?
for sure. Yeah, like the only way I think that Uppal could lose this game would be to take some incidental damage and then somehow expose himself to, like just a one-shot kill of some kind.
Right.
So Dustin gonna cling on for dear life with some chump blocks. He gets that extra turn. With the extra draw step, he finds Soldier of the Pantheon, which does not help him in the slightest. And it looks like we're on to game 2. So Justin, playing the mono black deck, a newfangled invention.
Yeah.
One that we haven't seen a lot of this past year.
Justin is an innovator.
Clearly.
I know him pretty well, and he's always building his own brews.
Yeah.
And for this one, he showed up with 18 swamps, it looks like.
Yeah. So Justin's sideboard contains basically the mono black devotion sideboard cards. 1 Underworld Connections, 3 Lifebane Zombie, 2 Drowned in Sorrow, 4 Duress, 3 Doomblade, and 2 Erebos, God of the Dead. A lot of those are very helpful. Lifebane Zombie, obviously good against green-white. Doomblades are completely unconditional here.
Right.
They just kill whatever, which is what you need. Drowned in Sorrow, I could take it or leave it, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it's good against half of the deck, but I think it's better on the play where you're more likely to be able to catch an Experiment 1 with it. But even then, it's still pretty sketchy. You definitely don't want that when you're facing down a bunch of like Fleeceman Lines and Advent tokens. And at the same time, like, he has a bunch of Doomblades in addition to all the removal he has main deck, so I don't think he's really stretched for removal. Like, I don't think he needs more than that.
Yeah, I agree. And then it just has 3 Underworld Connections, 2 Sign and Blood. I think he just trims those and just goes mono proactivity.
Yeah, I mean, you can certainly cut like a couple Nightveil Specters too. I think like those don't block very well.
True.
But yeah, I mean, it depends on how much card drawing you want, really. Being on the draw makes it a little bit worse, but on the other side of things, for the green-white aggro deck, Dustin is presumably going to be on the play. In his sideboard, he has another copy of Celestia Charm, 2 Scavenging Ooze, 3 Setescent Tactics, 3 Unflinching Courage, 2 Reclamation Sage, 2 God's Willing, and 2 Rootborn Defenses. So I would not expect much to be coming in here to help. There are a couple of copies of God's Willing, which lines up pretty well against things like Hero's Downfall, another Celestia Charm for Desecration Demon, and then maybe some Scavenging Oozes if you want additional threats, or Setescent Tactics if you're really scared about Pack Rat and Lifebane Zombie, which I know that some people side those in this matchup.
Yeah, that is, I played green-white for the times that I got to play Standard this season, and the bring-in tactics versus mono-black question was one I never came to like a satisfactory answer for.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things like Drown in Sorrow where it's like, I could take it or leave it.
Yeah.
You know? It lines up really well against some of their draws, but is not good at all points in the game. Sure. So if your hand gets shredded by like Thoughtseize Lifebane Zombie and you have this tactics in your hand that's not really doing anything, that's a pretty easy way to lose a game.
Yeah, definitely. It creates feel good and feel bad moments, kind of in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, the card's like a 2 or a 9.
Yeah. The times when you get the sweet 3-for-1, or you just get to establish board control with just 1 card out of nowhere.
Yeah.
You remember those games, but then you also remember the games where you just get stuck with 2 of them in your hand and no threat.
Yep, exactly. And I think it being somewhat unexpected gives it a little bit of extra value, but I also know that Uppal is a very careful, methodical player, and he might be able to sniff something out like that.
Sure. I mean, even if he could, like, he has so much removal that I think it would be really hard to actually establish multiple creatures in play anyway.
Yeah, that's certainly true.
You're basically looking at it like a weird situational-ish Soulsfire at that point.
Yeah. And if it is just killing 1 creature, it is probably not worth it to bring in because you already have things like Banishing Light and Celestia Charm. So I think you just want to be very aggressive, tap out, play a bunch of threats, and then maybe have a Banishing Light or Celestia Charm at the top of your curve if something actually gets in your way, like a Desecration Demon, and then just like not worry too much about the Pack Rats and the Lifebane Zombies, just trying to attack through those.
Yeah, for sure. These green-white decks are actually like reasonably well insulated against Lifebane Zombie anyway.
Yeah.
Particularly the lists, which, let's see if he is one of those lists with Call of the Conclave. I do not see it, no. So just Advent of the Worm. But oftentimes you'll see situations where like your opponent will play Lifebane Zombie and you'll show them a hand that is just
token makers,
yeah.
Not actual green and white creatures. Yeah, we saw a PTM15 a player like Martin Juza ended up cutting the Boon Satyrs from his deck because he didn't want like a big glut at 3 mana because that basically means that no matter what, Lifebane Zombie is going to be able to get a card out of your hand. So instead, he just trimmed those and made it very likely that if he was on the play, he was going to be able to play that under Lifebane Zombie, and then they would just have no targets for it.
And I think that's a reasonable plan.
Yeah, me too.
And we are off in game 2. Dustin Miles does have a 1-drop this time. Leads off an Experiment 1.
Yeah, so I think that's going to be a pretty big difference here. But I guess Uppal also has a Thoughtseize for a 1-drop, so
all right,
it's kind of even.
Yeah. Not a bad hand there. It looks like 2 Fleecemane Lions, 1 a Johnny Call of the Pride, and a God's Willing. Justin's in a weird spot here. You can't keep Dustin off of making his 2-drop with this Thoughtseize.
Yeah, and I know that that's what Justin wanted to do, was like break up his curve somehow, but seeing 2 Fleecemane Lions is kind of a dagger, but Dustin is kind of short on mana, so maybe the God's Willing doesn't actually do that much. So I feel like you just want to try and contain his creatures, assuming that you have enough removal.
Yeah, and he is going to go ahead and take one of the Fleecemane Lions. Those were the only two spells he could actually cast. Yeah, well, he could cast God's Willing, but obviously it's situational. So
yeah, I mean the threat of a Johnny certainly looms.
Right. Yeah, this way, even though Dustin's going to make his 2-drop, which he does, Fleecemane Lion comes down, Experiment 1 comes in for 2, you theoretically took him off of his 3-drop. Dustin needs to find a white source, which is, even if you draw land, it's not a given that it makes white.
Yeah, that's certainly true.
And the draw since Selesnya Storm and Soldier of the Pantheon, so no Ajani forthcoming. That Fleecemane Lion bit the Bile Blight, but Dustin going to keep swinging in for 2. And the question is, does Dustin follow up with Soldier or leave mana up for Charm? Going to leave up for Charm. And I guess the argument there, if you draw another white source, you can, the next turn, add another threat to the board and leave up God's Willing.
Yeah, I think you can do that either way, right?
That's
but
true.
This also uses your mana a little bit better. Like maybe next turn he draws an Experiment 1, for example, and then he gets to play 2 1-drops.
So gonna go for the Knight, but in combat it looks like Justin gonna use a second Bile Blade to kill that Experiment 1. So yeah, Soldier showing up. Still no 3rd land for Dustin. But Reed Duke gonna keep on plugging. So Justin down to 12. This is the game that Dustin wants to play, just keep getting in, nickel and diamond, getting in some damage. And I believe that's a Sign in Blood?
Yep.
Speaking of nickel and diamond.
Yeah.
So Justin fires that off, falls to 10, does find the land that presumably he needed to cast Doomblade. So doesn't necessarily lose ground there. Another Experiment 1 going to come down. Dustin still without a 3rd land, but still with a beater. Swings in with the 2/2 Knight. Justin down to 8.
Yeah, and now he's actually able to leave open God's Willing.
Yeah.
So that's good, but also Justin's getting to a point where maybe he can start playing things like Grey Merchant of Asphodel.
Yeah, or Desecration Demon, and that would have been one of the reasons in my head where I would have wanted to try and hold Selesnya Charm for as long as possible.
Yeah.
But it looks like Lifebane Zombie is going to be the play, and no legal target.
Yeah, this is one of those things where it's like all token makers and spells.
So God's Willing, Johnny Call of the Pride, we've known about those forever. Advent of the Worm, the additional card, the new information in Dustin's hand. And so it looks like Voice of Resurgence, the draw for Dustin. So still can't cast that Ajani, but is gonna swing in, represent God's Willing. God's Willing doesn't do much about a block from Mutavault though. So Justin activates Mutavault, it jumps in front, happy to make that trade, I think, and then just going to take 1 from the Experiment 1. And a post-combat Voice of Resurgence evolves the Experiment 1. That's an awkward spot there. He couldn't do the pre-combat evolve because he had to leave up God's Willing. I guess he didn't have to, but...
No, he didn't have to, and also running your 1/1 Experiment 1 into a Mutavault is kind of dangerous.
Right. And so Justin going to find a Doomblade, kills off Experiment 1, has to do that in his own turn, thanks to Voice of Resurgence, and takes the aggressive. Activation of Mutavault, joins Lifebane Zombie, knocks Dustin down to 11.
Yeah, it gives Dustin the opportunity to trade Voice of Resurgence for Mutavault there, but with Uppal at 7, Dustin would much rather have the 2/2 creature rather than the potential for just a 1/1.
So Dustin, again, still no land, and draws an uncastable Lockstone Smiter. So no play but to swing in for 2, which is what he does. Justin takes it, falls to 5, cracks right back. So 5-6. This game got close.
Yeah, this game is close, and I think Uppal's in a spot where I think the only cards remaining in his hand are lands. So he's just like, well, if my opponent draws a 3rd land, this is not going to be good for me. So I need to try and close this game out as soon as possible.
And speak of the devil, there's a 3rd land, but that land's mighty inconvenient right now.
Yeah, I mean, Temple Garden is part of the nut draw, but when you have to play it untapped in addition to a mana confluence when you're already under pressure, it's not the best spot to be in.
Yeah, Dustin, in order to cast the Ajani in his hand or the Smiter would need to fall to 3, a shock from the Temple and 1 from Mana Confluence. That puts him in 1-shot range from that Lifebane zombie. But he's going to go for it.
Maybe.
Maybe. I think he realized it just a little bit too late.
Yeah. So you can play a Smiter and be dead on board to the Lifebane. Yeah.
Okay. And at that point, once you've played the Temple untapped, I don't think there's really any getting out of that situation. Because
no,
you can't...
me either. But even if he played it tapped, I don't think he could get out of that situation because he was at 6 and Justin had the Lifebane that could finish him off. So.
Yeah, well, he has Lifebane and 1 Mutavault. So he plays it tapped, falls to 1. The voice swings in, knocks Justin to 3.
Oh, okay, and then next turn
next turn he needs to draw an a pain-free white source.